The Democratic Party used to oppose Trump's agenda with passionate and destructive marches and riots, but in his second term, that's all changed. The Democratic Party now clings to processes and legal strategies to combat Trump. Now, here to explain this shift is our Chris Bedford, because he wrote about this in his latest Beltway brief. So, Bedford, I know right now, our Julio Rosas is just waiting for a riot. He used to have them all the time. He was spoiled. But now we get this boring process and legal strategy. What's going on?
I know, it's completely changed. We were just talking about a trip he wants to take to Washington, D.C. He promises this one is going to be the big one. So we're going to come here and bring him. But it has been, I've had to point out to him, years since really the destructive street violence that we saw under the first Trump presidency. It's starting to look a lot more like it used to look, which is large protests maybe, and a couple of punk rockers who think that they're on the front lines of World War II, and they want to run out there and actually cause a riot, but they're outnumbered and they never really get anywhere. Now, we saw that especially at the RNC, for example, and we saw it at the DNC. Democrats, you'll notice, weren't fighting on the issues that they were once so self-righteous about. I mean, the left has been on the march since President Barack Obama was first elected, and that steady march turned into a charge, a sprint at the enemy once Donald Trump actually came into office. And for these last, particularly 5 years, where you, me, Matt, everyone who's watching, we lived through what was basically a moral panic, a moral crusade, where to post something on your Facebook page a few years ago saying, "I support the police," could get you fired from a corporate job in Texas. The level of insanity we were put through, and it was all about the substance. You couldn't attack on anything. You couldn't push back, or you were a bigot. You're on the wrong side of history. You don't hear that anymore. I think a perfect example of this was Donald Trump's back and forth with the governor of Maine, this ugly little midget woman who they tried to make into a liberal hero. It doesn't really actually work at all. She's since folded. But if you look at the back and forth between them in the White House, she doesn't say no, but men should be allowed to dominate women's sports. We stand with transgender youth. You're trying to kill people. If you disagree with this, you're trying to erase them and genocide them, like the activists have been saying for years. She just says, "Well, we'll see you in court. We're gonna fight you, and we're gonna fight you. We're gonna follow what the law says. Maine's gonna follow what the law says." It's an interesting illumination, and you see it too with Chuck Schumer, who is the first person to really fight for this and suggest it in the national level as to fight on process versus actually the cause. He's also the first Democrat who's not really a major potential presidential candidate. So they felt very comfortable going after him viciously in a way that they haven't been able to go really willing to go after Shapiro or Fetterman or Newsom. He's kind of taken a lot more bullets than they have for this fight. And that doesn't mean that this is a bad tactic. This is generally much more effective than street theater, to tie things up in courts, to argue where over the airspace you were when you got the order that the gangbangers from another country have a legal right to be here, according to some judge, or who has jurisdiction, how many miles does it go, was the order written down, was the order spoken. That's what they're fighting on now, and it's more effective at actually holding things up, but it lacks all of the spirit that we've seen over the last couple of years. It's just become a husk of itself.
So, Chris, let's talk about the cause of this shift, because it's marked, it's interesting. Certainly, the fire is gone, and it's almost as if every rally is actually a good thing for the right because you see it, you can mock it. It reminds me, not that I'm pro-Iraq war in retrospect, sadly, with many other people, but it reminds me of like the old people who used to be outside the college, when I was in grad school, who'd be protesting the war every day. It's like every day at the same time, some old people come out of the old folks' homes and, they'd have their signs. It's disintegrating back into that. But why has this changed in your view?
I think one of the main reasons is the extreme unpopularity of a lot of their views. I mean, men and women's sports is an issue where Democrats agree with the president on this. Independents agree with the president on this. Republicans overwhelmingly agree with the president on this. That moral crusade tired itself out. They tried initially to link every aspect of it to civil rights, and anyone who stood against it was either a Nazi or a slaver or a segregationist. Those are the types of people you're constantly compared to, just for saying maybe I stand with the police, or just for saying I don't want mentally ill adult men in my little girl's bathroom. The American people have turned on that. It's no longer a popular battle that they want to fight. So they're not ramparts and banners that are defensible anymore. So this progressivism. So if let's say you're AOC, it's got to be very shocking to you. You grow up, you go to Boston University, you travel the country going to these well-funded left-wing protests like Standing Rock, where all that fire and all that terror ended up unfolding. They just won a major lawsuit against Greenpeace over that protest. And then you run for Congress at the time of a left-wing upheaval, essentially. So you've never really had your viewpoints questioned. You've been on the winning side this entire time. No one's substantively pushed back against you. Even Nancy Pelosi was afraid of the power that you wielded and tried to bring you to heel. So she assumed that everyone disagreed with her because the pews were filled on Sundays for left-wing psychotic church. Now it turns out when that's not popular, when it's a political liability, she's finding out that there are much fewer actual true progressives than they thought. There were a lot of fellow travelers, a lot of people who were willing to use those ideas to gain power. People were willing to put their pronouns in every flag in the book that you've never even heard of, in their Twitter bios, in front of their homes, and all these signs when it's popular. But when it actually requires sacrifice, when you actually have to stand up against the American people on these issues, well, the ranks are a lot fewer.
Well, Bedford, I look at D.C. We know it's a swamp. We know there's corruption. We know all that stuff is still going on. But I mean, we haven't gotten an update about what it's like in D.C. from you for quite some time. We have no idea what the traffic patterns are doing anymore. What's it like, though, right now? I mean, because in all seriousness, in regards to this conversation, things are significantly different right now in Washington, D.C. than they were the last time Trump was in office.
Yeah, I mean, especially since the last time where the only people you would ever see supporting any kind of with any signs of support for the president were the folks who were tourists. You'd see tourists come in from school trips. Maybe you'd see a red MAGA hat and a junior high kid or one of those red fishing MAGA hats. That's essentially it. They were scorned. There were flags everywhere of different protests, different kinds of gay flags. Most houses seemed to have a sign in front of them. So they had their version of the Nicene Creed, but it was for left-wing causes. In this house, we believe. You don't see that anymore. There are restaurants and bars that are popping up that cater to people specifically who are Republican. There's a normalization of it. It kind of feels like a step back from the brinksmanship. There are reporters, once again, speaking to each other. There was a couple of years there where, for example, the Daily Caller, we used to host people from the Daily Beast for beer pong back in the day at our offices. The people would come over from the Huffington Post. We had friends over at BuzzFeed. You'd visit each other's offices. You knew each other. Sometimes you'd have lunch. You disagreed, but you were all humans, essentially. That all went away after November 2016, and it was gone for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And that all those barriers have started to fall down. People are looking around, maybe a little embarrassed. Maybe they're just trying to memory hold the whole thing we went through with COVID and the race riots in the country, just trying to put it all behind us. But there's a sense of normalcy. You used to have to go to Northern Virginia to find people who would openly agree with you, but now it's all over.
Well, the Democrats, sometimes they're still going to go out there and just play the hits, because we know Chuck Schumer is out there saying that democracy is at risk because Donald Trump is deporting gang members. Let's watch it.
Do you agree, is the United States in a constitutional crisis?
Yes, I do, Kristen, and democracy is at risk. Look, Donald Trump is a lawless, angry man. He thinks he should be king. He thinks he should do whatever he wants, regardless of the law. And he thinks judges should just listen to him. Now, we have to fight that back in every single way.
I love that he said that when they broke the law. Well, hold on. Illegals are illegal. They broke the law getting into the country, so why do we care about how we're going to send them back out of the country, Bedford?
Because he cares about a primary from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Earlier this last week, he was saying that we are not in a constitutional crisis. He wasn't ready to say that yet. What's changed? Except for the fact that he's been under attack. There have been a lot of people in that progressive group who have been pushing AOC to run against him. He's looking at his age, looking at the unpopularity of his last couple of weeks with the Democratic faithful, where he had to go on places like The View and say, I'm good at my job and I would like to keep my job. He didn't expect that, but he's not actually the leader for this moment. And here's the thing about the progressives that the other Democrats don't really are going to have a difficult time with. Even though they are fewer than they thought they were, they're vicious. They are completely and totally committed. They will do friendly fire in a way that you wouldn't expect other members of the Democratic Party to do. So if they come at him and they make a concerted effort, he's got to be sitting there wondering, who's the hardcore Chuck Schumer constituency? Who's out there with we need Chuck Schumer right now sign? Who's wearing a Chuck Schumer t-shirts and flying his flag? There aren't a lot of people, whereas someone like AOC has that group. She means to say dumb things like you break the law to get rid of people who are here illegally. And that's something that hopefully he's thinking will stave off any kind of a real challenge.
I don't know about you, but I mean, when I hear him revert to this, I have to stifle a yawn. I mean, I know I'm a little tired today, but it's like, look, it makes you yawn because what you hear him doing is going right back into the tropes. When he was saying we're not in a crisis, you notice, right? It's interesting. It's interesting when Democrats talk that way and say, oh, actually, this is a problem. And they might be full of crap and just, riding the tide, but that's fine. I mean, you take notice. When he goes into this, it's almost like going into a mantra. No, I mean, it feels to me like this is the kind of thing people see people going back to it, and they're going to have a negative reaction as a whole. So they better stay vicious because I don't see how this is going to work.
I don't think it's actually fooling people either. I think he's overplayed his hand here. I think what he did on the shutdown fight was the right move, probably, but I was shocked at how quickly he did it. Usually, Republicans do this all the time. They pretend to their base that they're putting up a fight. They exhaust all the options. They do brinksmanship. Maybe they even have a shutdown that lasts for 24 hours or 48 hours. And then they pull back and let some of their vulnerable members vote alongside with Republicans to move the vote forward, just to get through the cloture process, the weird 60-vote threshold. And then in the actual vote, they pull back all those Democrats once again, and they make Republicans pass it on their own. That would have been the kind of play that someone who's used to being in opposition would have made. Instead, I guess he was accidentally honest and said, we're not going to win this. We're just going to pull back. We're going to let the Republicans steamroll this. And I don't think he realized just how much pent-up anger there was in his base that no one was really willing to do anything at that moment. I mean, it was frustrating anger. It's like the anger that I have when I throw a DVD player across the room because I can't get it to work. It's not going to fix anything, but it makes me feel better in the moment. That seems to be what Democrats are feeling at this moment. I know that Jill's shaking my head, like, who still watches DVDs?
That's literally going to say the kids are going, we don't even use DVD players anymore, Bedford. You're
Dad,
so
what's a DVD
old
player
now. No, but like...
I'm like Joe Biden with this record player.
Yes, well, that's even better. But who do the Democrats have on the bench? Because we talked, it was a week or two ago that they were saying AOC got the most percentages of who they thought was going to be like the de facto leader of the Democratic Party. Who do you look for? And it's AOC, right? Who else is even on their bench right now?
That's exactly it, because she's the one who's out there fighting. Gavin Newsom's out there pretending he didn't even say the words that he said. There's a really funny super clip online of him saying, well, I don't know, that's Latinx. This didn't come from me or anyone on my team. And then they played it with him saying that word over and over and over again at different press conferences. He's out there hanging out with Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk, trying to pretend that he's cool. In fact, we should invite him on here to see if he wants to talk with us. Josh Shapiro is someone who has masqueraded as a more moderate Democrat. I think a lot of his views and the way he got to power show extreme anti-Catholic bias, a willingness to be vicious himself, but he portrays that way and he talks that way. And of course, there's the interesting dark horse of the guy in the hoodie who you bumped into last time you were in D.C., John Fetterman. He's someone who I think a lot of Republicans actually kind of nod along and agree with. He breaks with liberal orthodoxy in different places. He so far has not taken a single hard vote against his party, but he will voice opposition to different things. He shells at the protesters, tells them to shut up. He's someone who's a potential future candidate.
John Fetterman in the hoodie at the coffee shop, and he didn't even change. That was the best part when he went in for the inauguration. Didn't even care that he was just wearing a hoodie and shorts.